Glasbury, also known as Glasbury-on-Wye, is a village and community in Powys, Wales. The village lies at an important crossing point on the River Wye, connecting the historic counties of Brecknockshire and Radnorshire, and is located just outside the Brecon Beacons National Park, north of the Black Mountains. The village is split between the communities of Glasbury and Gwernyfed. The nearest town is Hay-on-Wye, some 4 miles to the northeast. The nearest city is Hereford in England, some 25 miles to the east. Glasbury is a popular location for river fishing, canoeing and kayaking. The population of Glasbury is 286, but in 1841 it was 838. History: St. Synodda and early settlement. The early village grew north of the river crossing, where a church was built dedicated to St. Synodda, a 6th-century bishop said to be buried in Glasbury. The name Glasbury derives from the Welsh Glas, which signifies a glebe churchland. St. Synodda's name is retained in the small settlement of Nilfanion to the north of the village, where Synodda's well is still visible. From the 6th century to the 11th century, Glasbury formed part of the kingdom of Brecon-Beacons, ruled from nearby Talgarth. Bishops of Glasbury. The importance of this early church was such that Glasbury was made a diocese. A list of the bishops of Glasbury still exists and gives the last bishop as Tryphon, who died in 1055. The diocese was subsumed by the bishopric of Glamorgan, later Llandaff. Battle of Glasbury. In the mid-11th century, the Welsh kingdoms were temporarily united under Griffith ap Llywelyn, King of Wales. On the 16th of June 1056, a battle was fought at Glasbury between an English force, led by Bishop Legar of Hereford, and a Welsh force led by Griffith ap Llywelyn, at which the warrior bishop was killed. Marcher lordship. After the Norman invasion, the kingdom of Brecon-Beacons was conquered or otherwise acquired by Bernard de Noailles, one of the Marcher lords. In 1088 he presented the manor and church of Glasbury to the Abbey of St. Peter's at Gloucester, and the parish church of St. Synodda was rededicated to St. Peter. The patronage of the church was later transferred to the Bishop of Gloucester and subsequently to the Bishop of St. David's, with whom it remains today. In 1144, as part of an exchange, the lordship of the manor of Glasbury passed from Gloucester Abbey to Walter de Clifford, after which time it was frequently contested by the Marcher families. Following a dispute with John Gifford, the lordship passed to John de Braose of Glasbury in 1275. In 1299, it passed to Margaret Longsby and her husband Henry de Lacy, 3rd Earl of Lincoln, and in 1330 to Roger Mortimer, 1st Earl of March. The lordship was seized by the Crown in 1331, but returned to Mortimer's grandson Roger Mortimer, 2nd Earl of March in 1354, and in 1360 to his son Edmund Mortimer, 3rd Earl of March. In 1404, King Henry IV granted the lordship to Sir Robert Whitney, in consequence of his father having been killed in the royal service and his property burnt by the Welsh rebels. Glasbury Castle. Glasbury Castle, north of the river, was first mentioned in 1144 when it was granted to Walter de Clifford. In August 1233, the castle was attacked and captured by King Henry III following a baronial rebellion by the Cliffords, but little more is recorded after that, though it was still in existence. In a survey of Glasbury Manor dated 1561, remains of its earthworks were visible near the centre of the village, until housing development in the 1970s. Split between Radnorshire and Breconshire, following the end of the semi-autonomous Marcher lordships with the Laws in Wales Acts chapters 1535 to 1542. The parish and village of Glasbury north of the Wye together with the village south of the Wye were placed in the hundred of Painscastle in the county of Radnorshire, whilst the outlying parts of the parish south of the Wye were placed in the hundred of Talgarth in the county of Brecknockshire. This continued till 1844, when all of Glasbury south of the Wye was transferred to Brecknockshire. The village today. Two ecclesiastical parishes. Following floods in the mid-17th century, the River Wye changed course and the old parish church of St. Peter's found itself south of the river and subsequently fell into disrepair. A new one was built still further south in 1661, though the current building dates from 1837. It is now a Grade II listed building. In 1883, a second church was built north of the river and the Radnorshire side of the village transferred to the new parish of Glasbury, All Saints. Mysluch Castle, overlooking Glasbury to the north, was built close to an original hall house of the Vaughan family which was later owned by Charles Lloyd. The house was rebuilt by the Howarths in 1715, when the surrounding park was also established. The current building was grandly conceived in castellated style by the architect William Luger for the De Winton family in the mid-19th century. In the Second World War it was requisitioned and used as a Canadian hospital and subsequently by the Land Army. Part of the castle was later demolished to reduce the costs of upkeep, but it remains an imposing private residence on a Grade II listed building. Nilfanion Chapel and the Nonconformists. The early Puritan Nonconformist Vavasor Powell is believed to have first started his preaching career to the north of the village in the 1640s. The 1654 pamphlet, Hue and Cry After Mr. Vavasor Powell, was written by Alexander Griffith, vicar of Glasbury, who had been expelled from the living by Vavasor and others for drunkenness and lasciviousness. Nilfanion Chapel was founded around 1691 on land donated by Charles Lloyd, Squire of Mysluch. It is considered the most important surviving building associated with the nonconformist movement in Wales and lays claim to being the first and oldest chapel in Wales. It is now a Grade I listed building, still used and maintained by the United Reformed Church. A much later United Reformed chapel was built on the village green in Gothic style in 1866, but is now a private residence. It remains a Grade II listed building. The Methodist chapel at Cumbark in the north of the village dates from 1818, when local farmer Richard Hurgist received a revelation that it should be built in his meadow. It is also a Grade II listed building and remains in use. The Baptist chapel at Treble Hill, just south of and conveniently close to the River Wye, was built in Temple style in 1866 and closed in 2010. It remains a Grade II listed building. Glasbury Bridge has repeatedly been destroyed by floods. A wooden bridge was washed away in 1738, a replacement in 1777, and a stone bridge in 1795. In 1850, a dispute between Brecknockshire and Radnorshire over costs for a new bridge led to the construction of a compromise half-wooden, half-stone bridge. The current six-span masonry bridge was built in 1923. Turnpikes, tramway, and railway. Glasbury was and still is on the main road between Brecon and Hereford and Brecon and Hay-on-Wye. These roads were formerly turnpikes and a turnpike toll house still remains on the northern edge of the village. In 1843 a Royal Commission of Inquiry took evidence that the Glasbury gates are a great inconvenience since persons travelling from one part of the village to the other pay two tolls, one to the Radnorshire and one to the Brecknockshire Trust. This provoked an incident during the Rebecca riots of 1843–44 when one of the Glasbury turnpike gates was destroyed. A tramway connecting Hay-on-Wye with the The Brecknockshire-and-Radnorshire Canal ran through Glasbury, on the southern side of the river. Called the Hay Railway, it was horse-drawn, carried coal, limestone, and agricultural produce, and opened on the 7th of May 1816. The stations were known as wharves, and Glasbury Wharf was at Clwyn Bark, to the southeast of the village, where traces of stabling for the draught horses remain. The tramway was replaced by the Hereford, Hay and Brecon Railway, which opened for traffic in 1864 and closed in 1962. The route mostly followed the old tramway. Glasbury Station was in the Treble Hill area in the south of the village, where 3 railway bridges are still standing. Inns and shops. The Mislewch Arms in the northern half of the village is an old coaching inn with stables and is a Grade II listed building. Though no longer on the main road, the inn still offers accommodation as well as food and drink, as does the Harp Inn on the southern side. Glasbury still retains a post office and village stores, as well as a riverside restaurant, an antique shop, a garage, and filling station. Canoeing and outdoor activities. Glasbury is a centre for canoeing and kayaking on the River Wye and for walking and other activities in the Black Mountains. 2 outdoor education centres are based in the village. Woodlands Outdoor Education Centre, owned by Oxfordshire County Council, and Glasbury House Outdoor Education Centre, owned by the London Borough of Redbridge. Both offer accommodation and a range of activities for young people. Glasbury Arts. Since 2007, Glasbury has hosted an annual autumn to spring festival of events and workshops celebrating literature, theatre, music, and the visual arts. Guests have included harpist Catherine Finch, singers Coop Boys and Simpson, Kiki D, Julie Felix, John Kirkpatrick, and Isla St. Clair, and local writer Jenny Valentine. Renamed Berry Glasbury features as one of the locales for Peter Greenaway's 1978 short film, Vertical Features remake, The Community of Glasbury. Following local government reorganisation in 1974, the village of Glasbury was split between 2 communities. The southern part of the village was placed in the community of Gwernyfed together with the neighbouring villages of Nilfanion and Velindra. The northern part of the village was placed in the misleadingly named community of Glasbury together with the neighbouring villages of Boru, Llanstefan, and Lowes. Orchards and the Glasbury apple. In 1815, the late Rev. John Hughes, curate of Glasbury, was described as an active and zealous orchard planter who introduced grafts from vigorous-bearing trees of the choicest cider sorts. Perhaps as a result of his endeavours, a 1912 guidebook referred to Glasbury nestling in a circle of orchards, some few of which survive to this day. An apple cultivar called Glasbury is still obtainable. It is a dessert apple, said to have originated in Norfolk in 1872, presumably from seeds or cuttings taken from Glasbury. Curiously, another cultivar called Glasbury was recommended as a cider apple in a book published in 1835, but this earlier apple now seems to be unknown. Kilvert Country. Francis Kilvert was curate of the nearby village of Cliro from 1865 to 1872. Glasbury is mentioned several times, are often as Sweet Glasbury, in his published diaries. Natural history. Glasbury still lies entirely within the Vice-County of Radnorshire for the purposes of biological recording. Plant and lichen records are thus included in the Flora of Radnorshire. The Brecknock Wildlife Trust Nature Reserve, known as Glasbury Cutting, has been created from part of the disused Hereford, Hay and Brecon railway line and is to the east of Glasbury, on the B4350 towards Hay-on-Wye. The reserve is home to rare dormice which were discovered there in 2000.